2, 3.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Genesis Client Services webinar. My name is Victoria O'Connor. I'm one of the counselors here at Genesis, and I'm going to let my co-leader introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Belinda Cardwell. I'm also a counselor here at Genesis. Good morning.
Great. So we are really happy that you have tuned in to watch or watching this on YouTube. Just a few reminders before we get started on our content today. So a reminder, this presentation is for educational purposes. Please consider your own situation and safety concerns before putting into practice any of the ideas talked about today. A couple of other safety notes. Please be sure to watch this in a safe place where only safe people can hear it. Potentially using headphones can help ensure that no one else can hear what you're watching. And also remember to clear your browser history after watching the video if someone monitors your phone or computer. If you are watching this live on Zoom and you need to leave the live webinar quickly, remember that you will need to click end a couple of times and leave, and then close the Zoom page in order for everything to close out. A couple of notes about confidentiality. So please do not use the chat feature on Zoom. This is because if you were to use the chat feature, your name and your comment would be seen by anyone watching the live video and also the video recording on YouTube. So please don't use the chat feature. If you do leave any comments on the YouTube video, if you're watching this later, your name and comment will also be seen by anyone else who watches the video. If you do have any questions about anything that we talk about, we do encourage you to reach out to us directly, whether by phone or email. Our contact information is here, and we will also include it at the very end of this presentation. We don't monitor or respond to any comments or questions left on the YouTube recording page, so please contact us directly if you do need help. So this webinar is not meant to be a replacement for crisis support. So if you are in crisis, still the best option is to contact our 24-hour hotline number. So this is the phone number you could call for emergency safety planning, emergency shelter. That number is 214-946-4357. If you would like to sign up for counseling or talk to a counselor about your situation, you can call our main outreach number at 214-389-7700. And then we also just wanted to make sure that everyone has some hotline numbers just in case you needed that extra support. So again, here's the Genesis hotline number. We also have the National Domestic Violence hotline number here. They also have a chat feature on their website. So if it's not safe for you to call, you could also chat with somebody through their website at thehotline.org. And there's also the number for the National Suicide Hotline here as well. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about how trauma affects the brain. I think this is a really important topic for survivors of domestic violence to learn about because this can actually help you understand your own experiences and your own, what's happening to you after you've experienced a trauma. I know the brain can sound really intimidating, and it might sound like, well, I don't know anything about the brain. I don't know what's going on up there. So we are going to make sure that we break this down and make it sound really understandable. There's lots of visuals here to help you understand because, like I said, we think this is really important information. After we talk about how trauma affects the brain, then Belinda is going to talk about some coping skills that you can use when you are experiencing trauma triggers. And we will actually lead you through a coping skill together at the end of this video. Okay, so let's get into this, the brain basics. So there are lots of brain regions, lots of parts of the brain, and we are only really going to focus on two areas of the brain today and how trauma affects these two areas. So the first region is the thinking brain. This includes a structure called the prefrontal cortex, but basically if you remember the thinking brain, this is kind of at the front of your brain up here. So this is where the parts of your brain that have to do with logic, that help you use reason, planning abilities, that's all located in this front part of your thinking brain. When you're in your thinking brain, you're able to feel calm, take in information, assess information, and you're able to take in things and rationally think about them when you're in your thinking brain. Another part of the brain we're going to talk about today is the emotional brain. This region of the brain includes several different structures and things. I'm not going to get into the specifics of all of that. Basically, this part of your brain has structures that have to do with feelings. This is also where there's parts of your brain that respond to danger. So when there's a danger present, this part of your brain lets you know there's a danger and then kicks into survival mode. Also, in this part of the brain too is the hippocampus, which also has to do with memories. And so this is all located in this emotional brain, kind of underneath the thinking brain a little bit. This thinking brain is actually, this front part of your brain, it's actually the last to develop in brain development. And we know that that thinking brain doesn't fully, completely finish developing until even your mid-20s, so about age 25. So that's like a higher level functioning, higher level skills in that thinking brain. The emotional brain has some skills and some functioning that is less higher level. Okay, so another way that we're going to think about this is using Dr. Daniel Siegel's hand model of the brain. This is another easy way to kind of understand what's going on in your brain. He has written several books that we talk about here at Genesis, including The Whole Brain Child. And so that's where this graphic is taken from. So I want everyone to hold up your hand and make a number 4. And then you're going to close your fingers around your thumb so that you make a fist. So this is your brain. It's actually kind of this size, if you can imagine, like right here in your head, right? So if you're looking at your fist, your knuckles and your fingers, this is that thinking brain, or that upstairs brain, as Dr. Siegel calls it. So again, this is that part of your brain where you're able to plan, you're able to think logically, think rationally. All of that is here. You make choices. That's all in the upstairs brain. And then if you lift your fingers and you see your thumb and your palm area, this is the downstairs brain, as Dr. Siegel calls it, or that emotional brain that we were just talking about. So again, this is the part of the brain where there's big feelings involved. If you've ever seen a kid have a tantrum, they are operating out of that emotional brain in that moment, right? Really, really big feelings, really big body movements, all of that is here in that downstairs brain, or that emotional brain. And again, this is where the parts of your brain that help you survive are located, that survival mode, all of that is in the downstairs brain. So as you can see here, if your fingers are curled over, that upstairs brain, that thinking brain, is connected with the downstairs brain. So the whole brain is all connected, everything's functioning. This is where you're feeling that calm state. Again, you're able to take in information, take it in, think clearly, rationalize. If you were to lift your fingers up, this is what he calls flipping the lid. We're going to talk a lot about this flipping the lid in a little bit, but just, as you can see here, if your lid is flipped, if that thinking brain, that upstairs brain comes up, you can see it's not connected with that downstairs emotional brain anymore. And so this is where a lot of triggers happen. And again, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but you can see how flipping the lid means your brain is disconnected in that moment. Okay. So next I'm going to go over talking a little bit more about the brain during a trauma. So there's a little tiny part of your brain called the amygdala. This is located in that emotional brain region. The amygdala is kind of like the smoke detector of the brain. It alerts you when there's a danger, when it perceives that there's a threat present, it alerts you, right? Danger, danger, danger. That smoke alarm is going off and alerts the rest of your brain when that happens. So again, the amygdala's job is to scan for danger and to alert you and let you know when there's danger. So what happens when that amygdala senses that danger, senses that threat present, then it initiates and the emotional brain takes over brain functioning in that moment. So this is when that survival mode kicks in. And this is a good thing, right? We want, when there's a danger, for our brains to be in that survival mode. This is going to help us survive the threat and hopefully get to safety, right? But this also means in that moment, when that survival mode kicks in, that your thinking brain goes offline. So you're not even able to access that thinking brain in that moment. So again, if you come back to that hand model that Dr. Siegel talks about, if you're in your emotional brain, that thinking brain flips up, the lid flips, and those parts of your brain are no longer connected, and you're just operating out of that emotional survival brain. Again, this is a good thing because if there's a threat or a danger present, it's not helpful for us to be having that access to that thinking brain. So if I'm driving and all of a sudden there's, a trash can in the road, I don't need to be thinking in that moment, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Or what was that thing I forgot to do at work? Or, what is my 5-year plan? What are my goals for my life? In that moment, I don't need to be thinking about those things, and those brain functions are not necessary for survival. So that's why in that moment, my survival brain is going to take over, and I'm going to make decisions, and my body is going to do things in order to protect myself and prevent me from hitting that trash can. What happens when people have experienced several traumas or repeated trauma is that this amygdala actually starts going off and becomes more sensitive and starts going off more often. So if this is the smoke detector of the brain, right, it's trying to detect smoke and detect fires, but what ends up happening with repeated trauma is it starts going off for the toaster. When there's just toast burning, right, it starts going off for those types of things, even though it's not truly a real fire or truly a real threat. So the amygdala over time with repeated trauma becomes overly sensitive to threats. This is in order to protect yourself in the future, right? If it remembers, this part of the brain, again, remembers what happens in the past, and its goal is to help protect you in the future. And so that's why, it's really sensitive. It's always starting to scan for danger. People who have experienced lots of traumas end up actually operating out of this emotional survival brain more often than not. And so this is why they might feel very on alert, very on edge, very hypervigilant. That's because that emotional survival brain is the main part of the brain operating in that moment. Okay. So when the amygdala alerts us to danger, okay, then the amygdala and the survival brain tell our bodies to protect ourselves. And there's 3 different ways that we protect ourselves. Our bodies are hardwired for these responses, just like animals. And so anytime I talk about this fight, flight, and freeze response, I always talk about it with animals because it's really helpful to understand that way. So when there's a threat or a danger present, one of our body responses is to go into a fight mode, or trying to fight back in order to protect ourselves when there's a danger. So this would be like a lion who is, growling, showing their teeth, ready to fight back. This could also be, for example, a bear, a dog. These are all animals that tend to fight back and go into fight mode whenever there's a danger present. Another thing that our bodies can do is go into flight mode, or trying to get away from the situation, trying to escape, trying to run away. And so this is, I always picture like in The Lion King when, those gazelles, they're in the field, they see that lion, and then poof, they run and they are, off, right? So they're trying to get away from the danger. They are escaping, they're running away. This is also like birds, for example, they fly away when there's a danger present. And this is flight mode. Another mode that our bodies use as a defense mechanism is also freeze mode. So freeze mode is like when you kind of feel numb, almost like frozen. We call this dissociation in counseling. This is that feeling where you're not fully present. It would be too much and too overwhelming to be fully present for that danger. And so your body and your brain kind of almost as if you're not really fully in your body in that moment. So for example, some animals that use this response would be like a possum that plays dead, right? In that moment, it's safer for that possum to freeze. Literally, the body freezes up and plays dead. Another type of example is, that kind of proverbial deer in the headlights, right? If a deer is in the road and it sees a car coming, right? Initially, the deer freezes, and we might be thinking, stupid deer, get out of the way, you're about to get hit. But then, that's its body actually using that freeze response in order to protect itself and to, have a second to assess everything. And then hopefully it runs away after. So this freeze response, this is also something that our bodies do to protect us in a dangerous moment. And again, this is also called dissociation. Children tend to use this response a lot, and it might be because it's too overwhelming or it would be too unsafe for them to be fully present in a moment when there's danger or there's a threat. And so they, our bodies kind of check out a little bit. It's almost like we're watching ourselves, like we're not really fully there and or fully present. You can also sense a lot of body cues with these responses. So if you notice like you were going into that fight response or even flight mode, you might notice like your heart starts pounding, your body is starting to warm up and heat up, your blood is flowing. And this is because your body is preparing to, that energy is preparing to fight back or to run away. You can also notice if you're starting to go into a freeze mode, if you notice that you're starting to space out, if you're feeling more numb, almost as if you're watching yourself out of your body or feeling really fuzzy. Those are some body cues that you might be in that freeze mode. For survivors of abuse, sometimes it's actually safer for them to use a fourth defense mechanism, and this is called appease. So our clients sometimes use fight, flight, freeze, or appease. And this is in those moments, sometimes it's safer for them not to fight back or to run away or to freeze. In some cases, maybe it's safer for them to go along with what the abusive partner wants and keeping them happy, and that way that threat can go away. Or, in a moment, maybe they go into that appease mode in order to protect themselves from potential escalating danger or potential escalating abuse. So fight, flight, and freeze mode, and also appease mode. We see these after that amygdala and that survival brain sense that danger. Then you go into one of these defense modes. Okay, so all right, let's talk about trauma triggers. So when something reminds us of a trauma, or our brains perceive a threat that was similar to like there was a threat during the traumatic moment, then that survival brain is actually going to get triggered and is going to start this whole response again, just as if the trauma were happening all over again. So these are what we call triggers. So like I said earlier, right, the goal of that emotional brain, that survival brain, is to protect us in the future. So if we sense something that was even remotely similar to something that we've already experienced, our bodies are going to kick into that survival mode in order to protect ourselves in the future, right? And so this means that sometimes we go into this fight, flight, or freeze mode when maybe there's not a true danger or there's not that true threat present. So an example of this would be, let's say that you're at work and your boss starts yelling at you in front of coworkers. That experience could remind your body of maybe an abusive partner yelling at you and some verbal abuse that you experienced. And so then your brain will go into that survival mode. That survival mode kicks in, and then you go into that fight, flight, or freeze response. And so maybe, if this happens, you notice that you're going into freeze mode, you're starting to become numb, you're starting to space out. Maybe the rest of the day, you're not really fully present, you're really numb, you're not really, fully engaged in things, kind of really in your head. So that would be an example of a trigger. Another example, sometimes these reminders can also be even sensory cues. So maybe it's a smell or a song on the radio that you hear that can remind your brain of that trauma. Maybe, it was a song that was playing during an incident of abuse. And, even years down the road, you hear that song and all of a sudden your brain goes into this survival mode. It's telling you danger, danger, danger. And then you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so maybe then, the rest of your day, you notice you're really irritable, you're yelling more than you would usually, maybe you're feeling more aggressive or feeling just more on edge, feeling irritable. And this is because you were triggered before. Even if you don't necessarily realize that that was the trigger, you are still operating in that fight mode or still operating in that more defensive mode. And so these trauma triggers can get really tricky because these brain processes are happening so quickly in the brain, and they're happening in that part of the brain where we're not really consciously thinking about it. So in this moment, right, when a boss is yelling at me, I'm not aware or thinking about, oh, this reminds me of this thing that happened, and this is why my body is starting to feel that way. It's very quick. It happens almost instantaneously. And so it's hard sometimes to be aware that you are triggered or that something did trigger you because these brain processes happen in a way where we're not necessarily consciously aware of them. The good news is that you can start to become aware of these triggers and start to plan for these triggers and use coping skills in that moment to help when you are triggered. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Belinda, and she's going to talk us through some coping skills for that.
Thank you, Victoria. I think you did a great job of explaining how the brain works, being that such a complicated and complex organ. And I know I'm not a neurologist, so that was good to know. But there are ways you can help your body cope and help your mind cope with the trauma triggers or the trauma cues. And again, just to repeat what she said, it could be a situation, it could be a feeling, it could just be the same emotion for some reason you've experienced before could actually set off your brain and flip your lid. So it's going to be all different cues that you might experience to have a trigger, and it could be unexpected or it could be something that kind of builds up gradually. And it's good to have your coping skills in place when you don't need them, right? Because if your lid is flipped, then you're going to have a harder time accessing your thinking brain. So that's why we encourage clients to have coping skills that they practice on a regular basis, so they're kind of in their toolbox, so to speak, and ready to use when they're needed to. So first you have to kind of be aware, are you in the fight, flight, or freeze mode? And so that's going to help you pick which coping skill. And also it's a good idea to have a variety of coping skills because not every coping skill is going to work for every situation. So one that we're very big on here is the deep breathing. So you're going to focus on slowing your breath, especially if you're in the fight mode, right? You want to take some deep breaths in, deep breaths out. And even if you're in the flight mode, right, or freeze, just kind of go back to your body, be present, and do some deep breathing. Also, a good way of being present in the moment is grounding techniques. And there's several ways to do grounding techniques. One of them is to use your senses. So you just kind of go through each sense and notice 3 things in the room that you're seeing, that you're hearing, that you're feeling, and perhaps that you're tasting. So you kind of go in and just use your senses to kind of refocus that you're in the present moment and you're not back when you were actually experiencing a trauma, experiencing that abuse. You could count to 100 as a way of grounding yourself. You could count backwards from 100. It takes a little more mental energy. Or you could just list categories. Maybe you list your favorite movies, or maybe your favorite TV shows, or maybe you list your favorite colors. And that kind of helps you come back in the moment, and kind of get out of that flipping your lid sensation. And then movement's always really good. Walking, swaying, using a rocking chair, just that gentle movement to kind of help reset your brain. And then there's the good old-fashioned emotional release, crying, yelling, using physical exercise to release your emotions and just kind of process those emotions so they can get processed by going through them and not putting them somewhere else, like maybe keeping that tension in your body or keeping the anxiety in your neck, but getting rid of those emotional releases. And of course, there's the social support, calling a family member, a friend, or the Genesis hotline for support is also a good way for coping with trauma triggers. But again, we encourage you to have a variety of coping skills already in place. Maybe you keep them noted on your phone, or maybe in a little on the back of a business card in your wallet, something that you can pull out and go through and say, okay, I think I need to do some deep breathing because I'm really feeling stressed right now, and I feel like I'm not being able to take a breath. So do some deep breathing, something along those lines. But we do have several other webinars on our YouTube channel that go into the coping skills in more detail. So if you go under our YouTube channel and you go under playlist, the coping skills for English speaking clients will be in one group, and it's a little bit easier to find that way. So there's one on coping skills in general, there's one on mindfulness, and there's just some good things to look at and just kind of help you understand coping skills a little more, because they are very, very important when you're dealing with trauma and dealing with the abuse that trauma has brought. So check those out. I think you'll find them helpful. And we're going to go ahead and actually do a coping skill. And since so much of what Victoria talked about is a physical response, the flipping your lid, the fighting response, the fleeing response is physical, I'm going to concentrate on our physical sensations. So we're going to do a progressive muscle relaxation, and this one's a little different than what I may have done before, which reminds me, every webinar we do a coping skill at the end of it, just to kind of give you an idea of something you might want to practice or to add to your toolbox. So this is a progressive muscle relaxation, and we're going to focus on the areas of our body that are keeping tension, because we all get stuck in certain patterns. Maybe you keep your stress in your shoulders. Maybe I could keep my anxiety in my core. So it's kind of good to know where you keep your stress, as awareness is always a good starting point to help improve yourself. So sometimes the body will be overly tense, and sometimes you might even feel like you're a little bit disconnected from your body, like Victoria was talking about with dissociation, that you're not in your body, right? So we're going to do some relaxing and tensing up, and that kind of helps reset our body. And what we're going to do is we're going to do specific areas of the body. We're going to tense as we inhale for a count of 8, and then we're going to relax as we exhale for a count of 8. And if you can't make it all the way up to 8, because that is a long, low, slow breath, that would be something you might work towards, but maybe you try to do 4 to 6, just something a little bit longer than what you normally would have tried to do. So we're going to go through the different areas of our body, and we're going to try to reset the tension and the physical sensations that are in our body. And we're going to first start with our neck and throat, because a lot of us keep this area rigid, and as a way of trying to control things, which we need to kind of let loose and let the body function as it should. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 8 while we tense our neck and throat. So tense your neck and throat, breathe in for a count of 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then exhale for a count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to breathe in again for a count of 8. We're just going to concentrating on that, feeling that area of the body. So breathe in for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then breathe out, just really concentrating and relaxing, and that kind of feel like that area is melting like butter. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going to move on to our shoulders, arms, and hands. So we're going to tense this up and breathe in for a count of 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now relax and exhale for 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're just going to breathe in for 8, concentrating and relaxing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhale, just feel that melting feeling. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, we're going to tense and breathe in for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then exhale and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, breathe in and concentrating, relaxing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then focusing on relaxing again as we exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we're going to focus on our core or our belly, because a lot of people have anxiety in this area of their body. And some people maybe just feel that there's an emptiness there. So we're going to tense and breathe in for 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to breathe in and just focus on relaxing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhale, again, focusing on relaxing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, we're going to tense our belly in for 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale and relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Once more, just relaxing the area of the belly. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhaling and melting. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last area of our body is our legs and feet. A lot of us feel quite separated from our legs, but our legs need to be a source of feeling our strength, feeling grounded. So let's go ahead and tense and inhale for 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale, relax. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just feel relaxed. Inhale again in your legs. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhale as we melt that area, the legs and feet. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time. Tensing legs and feet. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then exhaling and relaxing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time, just focus on relaxing the legs and feet by inhaling. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale and melt the tension in the legs and feet. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the last part of this is we're going to add some movement. We're going to do some swinging. So I want you to swing from your spine and just kind of swing your arms back to back. Just let the arms go. Let all that tension go. Anything that's been built up, let it go. We're just going to swing back and forth, maybe for another 5 times. Just kind of swing. Maybe you want to make sure your legs are relaxed and not firmly planted, so you can let any tension flow out the bottom of your feet. Going to swing for maybe one more time. Okay, now we need to check in. So do we feel different physical sensations? Do we feel lighter? Do we feel heavier? Do we feel more connected to our body? What kind of energy are you feeling? And if you need to do the whole series again. So, right, always check in with yourself, see what the difference is. I know I feel lighter in my chest and my shoulders, so I'm feeling much better. The energy's flowing, it's not being blocked in any area. So that was our progressive muscle relaxation. It's a little bit different than what I've done in the past because there's a lot of breathing in that, which is also important and a good coping skill. So we hope you enjoyed this webinar today and that you've learned something. And if you have any questions, here again is our information, Victoria and myself. I'm Belinda. And also we are doing open groups via Zoom. And if you'd be interested in joining one of those groups, just call us or email us so we can give you the information of how to actually be in a Zoom group where we can participate with each other and we can, actually chat back and forth versus the webinar where we have to not ask you to chat. So, I think that's it for me. Victoria, do you have any final words?
Yeah, I just wanted to just again say, well, first, thank you for that progressive muscle relaxation. That felt very good. And also just again to say, we think that learning about these brain processes can be really helpful to help you understand what's going on for you. I think, being kind to yourself, if this is the first time you've learned about triggers or what's going on in the brain, this is going to help you now going forward. If you didn't have this information before, that's okay. And now you can kind of start to become more aware. It might be a slow process to learn about some of these triggers and to learn about what's going on for you and your body. And coming to counseling, coming to our Genesis groups is a way to help you to build that skill and to build that awareness when you are triggered or when, these brain processes are happening. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I would not say that I'm a brain expert or a neurologist or anything like that, but hopefully this was an easy way to kind of understand what's going on in the brain after trauma and to help you have some more awareness of what's going on for you now.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And please check out our other webinars on our YouTube channel. And also just check in with us if you want information about the Zoom groups. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.